The day my father sold me, I realized monsters don't live in the forest. They live inside our own homes. Welcome to Emotional Tales Hub, where every story cuts deep into the heart. Elena had always believed that suffering shapes a person, but she never imagined her suffering would begin with the man who gave her life. Her father, Howard, once respected in the village, had become a hollow version of himself. Debt, humiliation, and anger had swallowed him whole. Their wooden house shook every night with the sound of broken plates, slammed doors, and shattered trust. Elena, quiet and gentle, carried a sadness deeper than her years. Her younger sister Lena often hid behind her whenever Howard's footsteps echoed. One cold evening, Howard called Elena into his room. His eyes were red, his hands trembling, not from regret but from desperation. "Elena," he said flatly, "you're going to marry Damien." Her heart stilled. Damien, the man who lived at the edge of the forest, alone in a stone house villagers avoided. A man children whispered about. A man rumored to be cruel. A man they secretly called the Dark One. "Why him?" Elena whispered, barely able to breathe. Howard didn't even look at her. "I've accepted his offer. He cleared my debts. You leave tomorrow morning." Her mother, Ruth, stood frozen in the corner. Tears filled her eyes, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that her voice held no power under Howard's roof. Elena felt herself collapsing inside. This wasn't marriage. This was a transaction. That night, she cried silently while Lena held her hand tightly. Maybe Damien isn't as bad as people say," Lena whispered, trying to offer a hope she didn't feel. But Elena knew. Once you are sold, your freedom no longer belongs to you. At dawn, with a numb heart and trembling hands, Elena stepped out of her home for the last time. Not as a daughter stepping into a new life, but as a girl being handed over to a stranger. She walked the forest road slowly, the wind cold against her face, each step pulling her deeper into a life she never chose. When she reached Damien's stone house, she braced herself for a monster. The door opened. Damien stood there, tall, cold-faced, unreadable. But his eyes carried a grief so deep it startled her. "You're Elena," he said quietly. His voice wasn't harsh, just tired, worn. "Come inside." The house was simple but warm. Crackling fire, carved wooden animals. Not chaos, not cruelty. Not what she expected from a man the world feared. "You can leave if you want," he said suddenly, surprising her. "I didn't buy you. I only paid your father because he threatened to do worse if I didn't." Elena looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Damien looked away, jaw tight, eyes darkening with a memory he clearly didn't want to revisit. "You'll understand soon," he whispered. He gave her her own room. Clean clothes. A bed that didn't creak. A window facing the forest. It was the first kindness she had received in years. But when night came, she heard him whispering a single name through the walls. "Marcel, forgive me." She didn't know who Marcel was. But somehow she knew one thing. Damien carried a secret that could change everything. Elena woke before dawn, long before the birds began to sing. The forest outside Damien's house was still wrapped in a thick, blue-gray mist. She washed her face with cold water from a clay bowl and tried to steady her shaking hands. Her first morning in Damien's house felt unreal, like she was living someone else's life. She walked into the main room slowly. Damien was already awake, standing near the fireplace, sharpening a small hunting knife. The sound of metal against stone echoed through the quiet house. Elena froze, fear gripping her. Damien noticed. He immediately set the knife aside. "You're safe here," he said softly. "I don't hurt people." His voice carried a strange mix of guilt and honesty, and for a moment Elena believed him. He handed her a warm piece of bread and a cup of herbal tea. "You can eat. Then if you want I can show you the rest of the house. You don't have to stay locked in a room." His words stung her heart. Locked in a room. Wasn't that what her old home felt like? Elena nodded quietly. As she ate, she noticed Damien watching her, not with lust or authority, but with the hesitation of a man who didn't know how to speak to another human anymore. Why does everyone in the village fear you?" Elena finally asked. Damien stiffened. He looked toward the window, as if the forest outside held the answer. "They fear things they don't understand," he said slowly. "And they repeat stories without knowing the truth." "What stories?" Lena asked. "That I'm dangerous. That I've hurt people." He paused. "That I'm cursed." "Are you?" she whispered. Damien met her eyes, and for a split second, Elena saw a pain in him that felt older than he was. A wound that refused to heal. "No," he said quietly. "But pain changes people. And villagers don't like people who are different." Before Elena could ask more, there was a loud knock at the door, sharp and urgent. She jumped, spilling some tea. Damien clenched his jaw. He walked to the door, opened it just enough to see who was there. 2 villagers stood outside, holding farming tools like weapons. "We heard you took Howard's girl," one of them spat. "You keep her safe. If she goes missing, if she gets hurt, we'll come for you." Elena's heart raced. Damien didn't respond. He simply shut the door quietly, without anger, without fear. When he turned back to her, she expected rage. Instead, he just sighed. "They don't know me," he said softly. "They only know rumors." "But why do they think you hurt someone?" she asked again. Damien hesitated. His face fell, shadows crossing his expression. "Because of Marcel," he whispered. Elena felt her breath catch. That name again. That name she heard last night. "Who is Marcel?" she asked. Damien didn't answer. He walked past her, opening the back door that led to a small garden. "Come," he said quietly. "There's something I want to show you." Elena followed him outside. The air was cold, sharp, and smelled of pine. Behind the garden, hidden between 2 tall trees, was a small wooden cross, weathered, hand-carved. Elena felt her heart sink. "Marcel was my brother," Damien finally said. "My little brother." He swallowed hard. "He died because of me." Elena's breath froze. Damien's voice cracked for the first time. "And the village never forgave me for it." Elena stood silently beside Damien as the cold morning wind brushed against the small wooden cross. She didn't know Marcel, but the grief in Damien's voice. It was real, heavy, the kind that lived inside a person for years. "How did he die?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Damien kept his eyes on the cross, jaw tight, hands trembling slightly, something she hadn't seen before. "I was supposed to protect him," he said slowly. "He was only 12, and he trusted me more than anyone." Elena stepped closer, not knowing why she felt the urge to comfort him. "We were gathering firewood near the river," Damien continued. "There was a storm coming, but he insisted we go. I should have said no. I should have brought him home." His voice cracked. "There was a landslide. Rocks, mud, trees. Everything collapsed. I tried to pull him out." Elena covered her mouth, her heart aching. "But I couldn't save him," Damien whispered. "He died right in my arms." He finally turned to her, eyes glistening, not with tears he allowed to fall, but ones he fought desperately to hide. "And the village never forgot it. They blamed me. Said I should have died instead." Elena felt a sting in her chest. This man, this feared, misunderstood man, wasn't a monster. He was broken. And broken people often looked scary to those who didn't understand pain. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Damien nodded once and walked back toward the house. His steps slow and heavy. Elena followed quietly, her mind replaying his words over and over. Inside, he set a pot of soup on the fire and began stirring it. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was something else. Something fragile. "You don't have to stay in the house all day," Damien said suddenly. "You can walk around the forest if you want. Just don't go too far." can be dangerous. Elena nodded. Can I help with something? Damien hesitated, then handed her some herbs to wash. They worked side by side in silence. No shouting, no insults, no threats, just a quiet rhythm, almost peaceful. It felt strange to Elin. She had grown up in a home where kindness was rare. Here, with a man everyone feared, she felt safer than she had in years. After they finished cooking, Elena took a walk through the garden. The sun had risen, scattering warm light on the flowers Damien had planted. She noticed something else. A small wooden carving of a bird on a tree stump. Delicate, detailed. She picked it up gently. You like it? Damien's voice came from behind her. He turned surprised. You carved this? He nodded. I carve when I can't sleep. It's beautiful, she whispered. He looked away, his face softening, almost shy. Before Elena could say more, they heard footsteps approaching the house. Heavy, fast, angry. Elena's heart tightened. Damien's expression shifted immediately. Jaw clenched, shoulders tense. Howard, her father. He swung open the gate and stormed inside, eyes wild, smelling of alcohol and anger. What did you tell them? Howard shouted at Elena. What lies did you spread? Elena stepped back instinctively. I didn't say anything. Howard slapped her so hard she fell to the ground. Damien moved faster than she had ever seen. He stepped between them, eyes blazing with the kind of anger Elena had never seen before, but it wasn't directed at her. Touch her again, Damien said, voice low and dangerous. And I swear you will regret it. Howard stared at him, shocked. No one in the village ever dared speak to him like that. You think you can threaten me? Howard spat. Damien didn't blink. I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. Howard took a shaky step back. For the first time, Elena saw something in her father's eyes she had never seen. Fear. You'll regret this, Howard muttered and stumbled away, leaving the gate open behind him. When he finally disappeared into the trees, Elena realized she was shaking. Damien turned to her immediately. Are you hurt? Elena nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. Not from pain, but from the shock of someone defending her. Why did you stand up for me? She whispered. Damien looked at her with a softness that almost broke her. Because no one ever stood up for me, he said quietly. And for the first time, Elena didn't see a feared man. She saw a wounded soul trying to protect another wounded soul. Elena's cheeks still burned where Howard had struck her, but the pain wasn't what overwhelmed her. It was the feeling of someone stepping between her and danger for the first time in her life. Damien helped her sit down on a wooden bench near the fireplace. His hands hovered near her face, unsure, hesitant, as if he was afraid she might pull away. May I? He asked softly. Elena nodded. He gently touched her cheek with a cloth dipped in cold water. The tenderness in his fingertips felt foreign, yet comforting. His touch wasn't possessive. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't like Howard's fists or his cruel grip. It was human. Your father shouldn't have come here, Damien said quietly. He won't step foot inside this house again. Not while I'm here. Elena lowered her eyes. No one has ever defended me before. Damien stilled for a moment, then said in a low voice, That's because you've only met people who didn't deserve you. He froze. Damien realized what he said, looked away, clearing his throat awkwardly. I mean, you deserve better. That's all. Elena felt warmth spread in her chest, something she had long forgotten. That evening, Damien cooked a simple meal, vegetable stew and warm bread. He placed a bowl in front of her with a nervous stiffness, as if he wasn't sure she'd eat something he made. It smells good, she said softly. Damien blinked, almost surprised. I tried, he muttered, scratching the back of his neck. They ate in silence, the crackling fire filling the room with warmth. The atmosphere was nothing like the stories told about Damien. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't dark. He wasn't monstrous. He was quiet, protective, deeply wounded. After dinner, Elena stepped outside for fresh air. The moonlight spilled across the forest, painting everything in silver. She heard a soft sound, crunching leaves. A figure emerged from behind a tree. Elena gasped. It was Lena, her younger sister. Elena! Lena ran to her, tears streaming down her face. I had to see you. Father has gone mad since you left. He blames you for everything. Elena hugged her tightly. I'm okay, Lena. I promise. No, you're not, Lena cried. He said he'll come back here. He said he'll take you away from Damien by force. Elena felt fear grip her chest. Before she could respond, Damien stepped out of the doorway quietly. Lena, he said gently. You shouldn't have come alone. It's dangerous at night. Lena stepped back nervous. Everyone feared Damien. But she saw how he looked at Elena. Steady, protective. You won't let father hurt her, will you? Lena whispered. Damien shook his head. Never. Lena exhaled shakily. There's something else, she said, wiping her tears. Howard went to the village council. He told them you forced Elena to marry you. He's spreading lies again. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Howard's lies had destroyed many lives before. Damien's jaw clenched. He wants the villagers to turn on me again. Lena nodded. He said he'll make sure they do. The wind blew harder, rustling the trees. Cold, sharp, almost threatening. Damien turned to Elena. You're safe with me, he said, his voice firm. But your father is dangerous right now. He's desperate. And desperate men do terrible things. Elena swallowed. What will he do? Damien looked toward the forest path, eyes darkening like a storm brewing. He'll come back, he said. And he won't come alone. Lena trembled. Elena felt her heart race. Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice. When that happens, stay behind me. No matter what. The night suddenly felt heavier, shadows growing longer, the forest whispering warnings. Inside the house, the fire flickered violently, as if sensing what was coming. Elena knew it now. Her father wasn't finished. And Damien was ready to fight the entire world if he had to. The night felt heavier than before, thick, tense, alive with an unseen warning. After Lena left quietly through the forest path, Damien locked the door and checked every window. His movements sharp, practiced, almost as if he'd done this many times before. Elena watched him cautiously. Do you really think he'll come back? She asked, her voice trembling. Damien didn't answer at first. He closed the last window, turned to her and said, Yes, men like Howard never accept losing control. Elena lowered her eyes. It was true. Howard had never accepted it when someone said no to him, not even his own family. Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice so gently she almost didn't recognize it. You're safe here, Elena. Whatever storm he brings, we'll face it. Elena swallowed hard. We. The word felt strange on her tongue. Damien nodded slowly. You're not alone anymore. Something warm flickered in her chest. Hope small and fragile. Damien handed her a small oil lantern. If there's danger, this will guide you to the basement. It's safer down there. Elena frowned. The basement. Damien hesitated, then said softly. It was Marcel's room. Elena's breath caught. His brother. The boy he couldn't save. Is it okay if I go there? She asked carefully. Damien nodded. He would have liked you. They stood in silence. The house creaked as wind brushed against its walls. The fire crackled slowly. The moment felt heavy, sad but soft. Eventually they sat near the fireplace. Damien sharpened a wooden carving, and Elena wrapped herself in a blanket. Damien, she began quietly. Why didn't you fight the rumors? The lies. He paused, knife midair. Because people don't want the truth, he said finally. They want a monster to blame. And when someone is already broken, It's easier to believe. Elena looked at his face, strong but tired. In that moment she understood something. Damien wasn't feared because he was dangerous. He was feared because he was grieving alone. Before she could speak, there was a sudden scratch at the door. Soft tap, barely audible. Damien immediately stood up. Elena grabbed his arm. What is it? Damien listened carefully, his body tense. A child's voice whispered from outside. Is anyone there? Elena's heart skipped. Damien stepped toward the door but didn't open it. Who are you? He asked. The voice trembled. My name is Thomas. I can't find my mother. I'm lost. Elena gasped. A child? Out here? At this hour? Damien's eyes darkened with suspicion. No child wanders into this forest by accident, he murmured. Elena felt a chill run up her spine. Damien unlatched the door slowly, just a crack, and saw him. A small boy, barely 10, shivering in the cold, eyes wide with fear. Please help me, he whispered. Elena stepped forward, instinctively wanting to bring him in. He reminded her of Lena, scared, fragile. But Damien stopped her with a raised hand. Elena, wait. He crouched to the boy's level. Where did you come from, Tomas? The boy sniffled. I was with some men. They said they were taking me home, but they left me here. Damien's eyes narrowed. Elena's breath hitched. Some men. Damien repeated. What did they look like? Tomas hesitated. They were angry. They talked about someone named Howard. Elena felt the world tilt. Damien slowly stood up, jaw clenched so tight his teeth almost cracked. Elena, he said, voice low and dangerous. He's started already. What? She whispered, shaking. Damien looked at her, his eyes burning with certainty. Your father didn't go to the village council. He stepped back, pulling the boy inside. He gathered men. Elena felt her knees weaken. Damien locked the door. They're using this child to make us open the house. His voice was filled with fury and fear for her. Elena shakily held Tomas close. What do we do now? She whispered. Damien looked toward the forest, jaw tight, eyes sharp like a wolf preparing for a fight. We prepare, he said, because your father isn't coming back alone. The fire flickered violently behind them, shadows dancing against the walls. As danger crept closer through the trees, the night deepened, pressing against the windows like a quiet warning. Elena kept Tomas close, wrapping a blanket around his trembling body. The boy clung to her arm, eyes darting nervously around the room. Damien moved with sharp purpose, checking the back door, securing the shutters, placing a heavy wooden bar across the front entrance. His movements were fast, practiced, almost as if he had prepared for something like this long ago. Elena's heart pounded. Damien, what are they planning? She asked. He paused, glancing at Tomas before answering. Your father won't come here to talk. Men like him don't waste breath when they want control. He stepped closer to the window, peering out into the darkness. And he won't come alone. He'll bring men who fear him more than they fear the truth. Elena swallowed, her hands trembling. How could he involve a child? Damien's jaw tightened. Howard knows you won't ignore a lost child. He counted on that. Tomas was meant to distract us, so they could surround the house. Tomas buried his face into Elena's arm. I'm sorry, the boy whispered. I didn't know they were bad. They said they'd take me home. Then they left me alone in the dark. Elena stroked his hair gently. You're safe now. No one will hurt you. Damien knelt beside the boy, his expression softer for the first time that night. Tomas, do you know how many men were there? The boy thought for a moment. 4. One of them was very loud. He kept shouting about you. Damien's eyes narrowed. That's Howard. He stood up, exhaling sharply. They're already close. Minutes passed like hours. The wind rattled branches against the roof. Shadows flickered across the walls. Elena could feel the tension tightening the air with every second. Damien handed Elena a small wooden box. "What is this?" she asked. "Matches," he said calmly. "If anything goes wrong, light one. The smoke will guide you to the basement door." "Damien, I don't want to hide," she whispered. He looked at her, really looked at her, his eyes reflecting a storm of fear and determination. "I know. But if they break in, their anger won't stop. You and Tomas stay behind me. No matter what." Elena nodded slowly. She didn't want him to fight alone. But she also knew he wasn't giving her a choice. Suddenly, clack, a branch snapped outside. Then another. And another. Elena's heart stopped. Damien stepped forward, his entire body going rigid, his hand instinctively reaching for the axe hanging beside the door. "Stay close," he whispered. The footsteps came next, slow, heavy, deliberate. Not one pair. Many. Shadows moved across the windows. Low voices murmured outside. The unmistakable sound of metal being dragged across dirt. Tomas whimpered. Elena tightened her grip on him. Damien took a deep breath and blew out the nearest lantern, plunging half the room into shadow. The voices outside grew louder. Howard's voice echoed through the night, dripping with rage. "Damien, bring Elena out right now. She's my daughter. You stole her." Damien's eyes burned. He stepped forward until he stood inches from the door. "No," he said, voice steady as stone. "She's not an object. And she's not yours anymore." Howard laughed, a sharp, hateful sound. "You think you can hide behind your walls? You think we fear you?" Another voice joined him. "Come out, monster. Or we'll drag you out." Elena felt her breath break. They weren't just here for her. They were here to hurt Damien. Damien turned his head slowly toward Elena. "And this," he murmured, "is why the village fears me. Not because he was dangerous, but because they made him into a monster in their stories." He grabbed the axe and stood tall, his shadow stretching across the room like a silent guardian. The door shook violently as someone kicked it. Then again, harder. Tomas screamed and buried his face into Elena's chest. "Elena!" Howard shouted. "Open the door. Or by sunrise, this house will burn." Elena's heart raced painfully. Damien stepped between her and the door, not flinching even once. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. "No matter what happens." And as the door rattled again, as men muttered outside, as the wind howled like a warning, Elena realized something terrifying. Howard didn't come to take her back. Howard came to destroy everything he couldn't control. The door shook again, harder this time, each impact sending a jolt through the wooden frame. Elena held Tomas tightly as fear wrapped itself around her chest like a cold hand. Damien didn't move. He stood in front of the door like a shield, his shoulders broad, his stance steady, his eyes fixed forward. The soft glow of the fireplace behind him carved shadows across his face, making him look like a warrior carved out of stone. Another kick. The hinges groaned. "Elena!" Howard screamed from outside, voice trembling with fury. "You belong to me. You're my daughter. You will come out now." Elena's tears blurred her vision. She had been property to her father her entire life. Burden, tool, payment, never a human being. But this time she wasn't alone. Damien turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the calm determination in his eyes. "You're not going anywhere," he whispered. "Not unless you choose to." Elena swallowed hard. "Damien, will they hurt you?" He held her gaze for a long moment. "I've survived worse." Then, with a faint, reassuring softness, "And this time, I have something worth fighting for." Her breath caught. Before Elena could respond, Howard's voice boomed again. "Break the door. I want her out." 3 men began slamming their weight against the door, grunting with effort. Bang! Bang, bang. The wood cracked slightly at the edge. Tomas whimpered and buried his head deeper into Elena's arms. Damien crouched down next to them. "Elena," he said calmly, "take Tomas to the basement. Stay there until I call you." She shook her head immediately. "No, I won't leave you alone." Damien's jaw clenched, not in anger but fear. Fear for her. "Elena, listen to me," he said softly. His voice steady despite the chaos outside. "If they break in and find you, they won't stop until they tear this place apart." Elena trembled. "What about you?" Damien gave a faint smile, sad, brave, tired. "I can handle them. I've handled worse than their hatred." Her heart twisted painfully. Why did he care so much? Why was he risking everything for her? Another violent strike shook the door. Crack. A piece of wood splintered and fell to the floor. Damien grabbed Elena's hand and squeezed it firmly. "You are not going back to him," he said. "And I will not let him decide your fate ever again." His hand lingered on hers a moment longer than necessary. Then he let go. "Elena, please," he whispered. "Go." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, even though her soul felt like it was breaking. She lifted Tomas, and they moved quickly toward the basement door. Damien handed her the lantern. "Don't open it until I call," he instructed. Elena's fingers brushed his as she took the lantern, warm skin to warm skin, and he froze for half a second. So did she. Then she hurried down the wooden steps with Tomas, the lantern flickering dimly against the stone walls below. As she reached the bottom, she looked up one last time. Damien stood at the top of the stairs, framed by firelight and shadow. A lone figure. Quiet protector. Their eyes met. No words. Just a silent promise. Then he closed the basement door gently. Elena pressed her ear against the cool wood, her heart thundering. Above her, the door to the outside crashed again. Howard's furious voice broke through. "You think you can protect her, Damien? You're dead wrong." Damien's voice followed, deep and steady. "No, Howard. The dead wrong one is the man who sold his daughter." Another crash. Men shouting. Tomas trembled in Elena's arms. And as the basement walls vibrated with the violence above them, Elena whispered into the dim lantern light. "Please. Damien, don't get hurt." Above the basement, chaos exploded. Elena clutched Tomas tightly as the wooden floorboards trembled with each violent blow. The house groaned under the force. Men shouting, boots stomping, the door splintering inch by inch. Tomas whimpered. "Elena. Are they going to hurt Damien?" Elena kissed the top of his head, even though fear churned inside her like a storm. "No," she whispered, trying to sound brave. "He's strong. He won't let anything happen." But her own heartbeat told a different story. Another crash echoed above them, louder, fiercer. Crack. The outside door finally gave way. Men poured into the house. Boots scraped the floor. Voices snarled. Howard's rage filled the entire space above her. "Where is she?" he roared. "Damien. Bring her out." Elena covered Tomas's ears to block the shouting. Damien's voice emerged. Commanding. "She's not your property, Howard." A brief silence followed. Then a fist hit something hard. Maybe a table, maybe a wall. "You think you can keep her from me?" Howard snarled. "You filthy freak. This whole village hates you. They know what you are." Damien didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I know what I am," he said quietly. "But more importantly, I know what you are." Elena pressed closer to the basement door, her heart thundering. Howard spat. "And what's that?" "A coward," Damien replied. There was another explosion of movement. Furniture crashing, men shouting. Punch. A grunt. A struggle. Tomas squeezed her hand tighter. "Is he fighting them?" Elena nodded, tears burning her eyes. Damien was fighting them all. Because of her. Suddenly, footsteps thundered across the floor above the basement stairs. Multiple. Elena's breath caught. They were looking for her. Check the rooms, one shouted. She must be here somewhere. She better be alive, Howard growled. Or Damien's blood won't be enough. Loud thud. Something or someone hit the ground hard. Get him, a man yelled. Damien was outnumbered. Elena covered her mouth to smother her sob. Tomas tugged her sleeve. Elena, look. He pointed toward the far corner of the basement. A small crack in the stone wall, letting in a faint breeze. A back way out, Elena whispered. Tomas nodded shakily. I saw it when we came down. Maybe we can hide or run. Elena hesitated. Damien had told her not to open the door unless he called for her. But what if he couldn't call? What if he was hurt? If? She shook her head. No, we're not leaving him. Tomas swallowed. Then what do we do? Elena knelt in front of him, holding his shoulders gently. We wait, she whispered. We wait, and we trust Damien. But even as she said it, the chaos above grew louder. Men yelling. Furniture scraping. Something breaking violently. Damien's voice, strained now, cut through the noise. She's not going back to you. Howard snarled back. She was born to obey me. Now move. Mash. Something shattered, glass or pottery, and footsteps stumbled. Elena cried silently. Damien, she whispered, her voice trembling. Tomas held her hand, squeezing it like she was the only safety he had left. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the shouting slowed, replaced by heavy breathing and shuffling. Silence. Lena froze. The quiet was worse than the noise. Because silence meant only two things. Either Damien had won, or Damien had fallen. Tomas's small voice trembled. Elena, what's happening? Elena pressed her ear harder against the wooden door. She heard a faint sound, barely audible, slowed dragging noise. Someone moving. Someone injured. Voice. Weak. Vain. But unmistakable. Elena. Her breath broke. It was Damien. Damien! She cried softly through the door. Are you okay? Please answer me. He took a shuddering breath. They're gone, he whispered. For now. Elena didn't wait another second. She pushed the basement door open. And what she saw made her knees buckle. Damien stood in the dim light, bruised, bleeding from his forehead, his shirt torn, his hand shaking as he leaned against the wall. He had fought all of them, for her. Damien! Elena whispered, rushing toward him. He looked at her with a faint, tired smile. I told you, he said hoarsely. I can survive worse. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed into her arms. Elena's hands shook as she caught Damien before he hit the floor. His weight leaned fully into her, warm but frighteningly limp. She lowered him gently, her heart pounding with every shallow breath he took. Damien! Damien, look at me, she whispered, tapping his cheek. His eyelids fluttered open just enough for her to see the exhaustion in them. I'm fine, he muttered weakly. You're not fine, she whispered back, tears filling her eyes. You're bleeding. Tomas rushed to Elena's side, his small face pale with worry. Is he dying? The boy stammered. No, Elena said immediately, her voice trembling but firm. He's not dying. He's too stubborn to die. Damien let out a faint laugh, barely a breath. Elena gently wiped the blood from his forehead with her sleeve. Her hands were soft, trembling, but full of care he hadn't felt in years. Damien blinked slowly. You weren't supposed to come out yet, he whispered. And leave you like this. Elena whispered back. Never. He closed his eyes for a moment, his jaw tightening in pain. I told you to stay safe, he murmured. His voice cracked, this time not from anger but something far more fragile. I am safe, she said softly. Because you're here. His breath hitched just slightly. Elena helped him sit up against the wall. Tomas brought water, while Elena searched the nearby shelf for cloth and herbs she had washed earlier. "Damien, let me clean this," she said gently. He didn't argue. He didn't have the strength to. She cleaned the cuts on his face, then wrapped a cloth around his arm where blood soaked through his shirt. Every touch carried something unspoken: fear, gratitude, and something warmer she didn't dare name yet. Damien watched her hands, then her face, then looked away as if afraid of what he felt rising inside him. "Elena," he whispered, voice hoarse. "You didn't have to stay. You could have left during the chaos." She froze. "Left?" she repeated quietly. "Why would I leave the only person who has ever protected me?" Damien swallowed, eyes lowering. He looked almost ashamed. "I don't want you to stay because you feel you owe me something," he whispered. "I want you to stay only if you choose to." Elena stared at him, heart aching. "I'm here because I want to be," she said softly. "No one forced me. Not you. Not my father. No one." Damien closed his eyes briefly, relief washing over his bruised face. Sudden thud came from outside. Elena stiffened instantly. Damien's eyes snapped open. Tomas whimpered, crawling closer to Elena. Damien forced himself upright, fighting against the pain. "Stay back," he said, his voice still steady despite his injuries. He grabbed the axe handle with a shaking hand and stood, every muscle protesting. "Damien, wait." Elena tried to hold him back, but he stepped forward, body tight with alertness. Another sound, not as loud this time, like someone stumbling or crawling. Damien reached the window, peered out carefully, then exhaled sharply. "It's not them," he murmured. Elena moved closer. Outside, under the faint moonlight, lay one of the men who attacked the house. Face bruised, clothes torn, struggling to get up. Damien clenched his jaw. "He didn't come back for a fight," he said. "He's trying to run." Elena's stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" Damien turned to her, eyes dark and serious. "It means Howard isn't finished," he said. "He's regrouping. He'll come back with more men or worse." Tomas whimpered. Elena felt fear rise. But so did something else. Resolve. "We can't stay here," she whispered. Damien hesitated, because this house wasn't just walls and wood. It was memories. His brother's grave. His mother's last gift. Everything he had left. But he looked at Elena, really looked at her. Bruised. Terrified. Yet still choosing to stay with him. He lowered his head, breathing hard. "You're right," he whispered. "It isn't safe anymore." He turned toward the back door. "We leave at dawn," he said. Elena nodded. "But Damien," she whispered softly, touching his arm. He looked at her, tired but standing. "We won't leave you behind," she said firmly. "You're coming with us." For the first time since she met him, Damien didn't look like a man full of grief. He looked like a man who finally had something to live for. Dawn crept slowly across the sky, brushing the forest with pale gold. The world outside looked quiet, gentle. But Elena knew the calm was a lie. Night had brought chaos. Morning would bring consequences. Damien stood near the window, leaning on the wall for balance. His injuries were still fresh, but his eyes were sharp, alert, protective. Elena stepped closer. "Are you sure you can travel?" she asked softly. Damien exhaled slowly. "If we stay, Howard will return with more men. I won't risk you, or Tomas." Elena nodded. She knew he was right. Tomas clung to her arm, still frightened from the night before. "Where will we go?" Tomas whispered. Damien looked toward the distant hills. "There's an old cabin deep in the northern woods. Few people know it exists. We can hide there until things calm down. Or until we figure out what Howard plans next." Elena swallowed hard. Will the village believe his lies? Damien's jaw tightened. They already do. The sadness in his voice cut through her. A man misunderstood, blamed, exiled by rumor. And now, hunted by the man who sold his own daughter. Damien gathered supplies: bread, dried meat, herbs, blankets. He moved slower than usual, wincing each time he bent or lifted, but refusing help. Elena tried to take the basket from him. "Let me. I can manage," Damien said, but his voice softened. "You carry Tomas's things. I don't want him uncomfortable." Elena placed Tomas's small bag over her shoulder. "Damien," she said gently, "you don't always have to be strong alone." He paused. Then very quietly he replied, "I don't know how to be anything else." Her heart ached. As they stepped outside, frost sparkled on the grass. Smoke still curled faintly from the fireplace chimney, mixing with the morning air. The forest felt larger, heavier, as if watching them leave. Damien insisted on walking ahead, shielding them from danger even in his weakened state. Elena and Tomas followed closely behind. Halfway down the forest path, Elena noticed him limping, hiding the pain with effort. "Damien, stop a moment," she said gently. He didn't. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding again," she said, stepping in front of him and forcing him to halt. He looked down. Blood had seeped through the bandage on his arm. Elena's eyes softened. "Just let me fix it." Reluctantly, Damien sat on a fallen log. Elena knelt beside him and unwrapped the cloth carefully. Tomas handed her fresh herbs and another strip of fabric. Damien winced slightly as she pressed the herbs against the wound. "You should have let me handle the men alone," he muttered. Elena shook her head. "And let them hurt you even worse." "No." Damien exhaled, eyes lowering. "You shouldn't care this much," he whispered. She stopped, her fingers resting against his skin. "But I do." His breath caught. For a moment, he looked at her like he wanted to say something. Something deep, something he had buried for years. But footsteps echoed suddenly, snapping twigs. All three froze. Damien stood immediately, shielding Elena and Tomas with his body. Voices approached from the east side of the forest. Angry voices. Howard's voice. "There. Footprints. They went this way." Elena's heart stuttered. He wasn't far. He wasn't giving up. Damien grabbed her hand. "We have to move now." They ran deeper into the woods, branches whipping against their clothes, cold air burning their lungs. Tomas stumbled. Elena picked him up, holding him tightly. Behind them, Howard shouted, "Find them. Don't let them get away." Men's footsteps scattered in different directions. Damien looked at Elena, his breath uneven. "We can't outrun them in the open," he said. "We have to go through the river." Elena's eyes widened. "But the current." "I'll hold you both," Damien said firmly. "They won't track footprints through water." He didn't wait. He lifted Tomas, held Elena's hand tightly, and led them toward the riverbank. The water was icy, swirling fast. Elena swallowed fear. "Are you sure?" Damien met her gaze. "If I lose you, I lose everything." Her heart hammered. Not from fear this time. Without another word, they stepped into the freezing water. Damien held them both steady, guiding them across the strongest current. The cold bit into their skin, numbing their feet and legs, but they pushed forward. Halfway through the river, Howard and his men broke through the trees behind them. "Elena!" Howard roared. "Come back!" Elena clung to Damien's arm tightly. "Don't stop," she whispered. Damien didn't. He pressed forward, the current fighting him, his injuries screaming in pain. But he held Elena and Tomas like they were the only things keeping him alive. When they reached the other side, Damien collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Elena grabbed him, helping him stand. "We're close," he said, forcing himself up. "The cabin is just beyond those cliffs." Behind them, Howard's furious voice echoed across the river. "You can't run forever, Damien. She belongs to me." Damien turned his head slightly, eyes burning with something fierce and unshakable. "No," he whispered. "She belongs to herself." And with that, They disappeared deeper into the woods, toward the only place left where hope could survive. By the time they reached the cliffs, Elena's legs felt numb from the freezing river, and Tomas trembled violently in her arms. Damien kept moving despite the pain etched deep across his face. Every step was a battle, but he walked as if the earth itself depended on him getting Elena to safety. A thick fog settled over the northern woods, curling around the trees like ghostly fingers. Elena could barely see a few feet ahead. "Damien," she whispered, "are you sure we're going the right way?" He nodded, breath uneven. "There's a ridge ahead. Behind it is the cabin." His words gave her a flicker of hope. Small but enough. They climbed upward, the ground growing rocky under their feet. Tomas whimpered each time the wind sliced through them. Elena pressed him closer, shielding his face. Finally, through the mist, a dim outline appeared. A small wooden cabin, old but still standing. Hidden by massive stones and twisted branches. Invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Damien exhaled shakily. "We made it." Elena squeezed his hand. But before she could speak, Damien swayed. His knees buckled. "Damien!" she gasped, catching him before he hit the ground. He leaned heavily against her, breath ragged. "I'm fine, just tired," he whispered. Elena guided him inside the cabin. It was dark but dry, filled with the smell of old wood and memories. She laid him gently on a low cot and checked his bandages. They were soaked again. "Damien, this is more than exhaustion," she whispered fearfully. He closed his eyes, jaw tight. "I'll be okay. I just need rest." But Elena could hear the subtle tremble in his voice. His body had reached its limit. Tomas stayed close, staring with frightened eyes. "Is he hurt because of me?" the boy whispered. Damien opened one eye, shaking his head slightly. "No, Tomas. You didn't do this. Your mother. She would have wanted someone to help you. I did what anyone with a heart should do." Elena felt something warm and painful twist inside her chest. She dipped a cloth in cold water, wiping the sweat from Damien's brow. He winced. "Elena, you should rest too." "Not until you're better," she whispered. He watched her silently, his eyes softening in a way she had never seen. Vulnerable, grateful, almost tender. "Elena," he murmured, almost as if he wasn't sure he should say what was on his mind. You don't have to stay here with me. You could take Tomas and go. The town isn't safe, but the southern path leads to another village." She pressed her fingers gently against his lips, stopping him. "Damien," she whispered, "I'm here because I want to be. Don't push me away." His breath caught, and for a moment he looked away, close to tears he refused to show. The cabin door rattled softly as wind whistled outside. Elena peeked through the shutters. No one. It was fog. But the silence felt wrong. Too heavy. Too still. "Do you think my father will find this place?" she asked quietly. Damien forced himself to sit up a little, grimacing in pain. "He'll try. But he doesn't know these woods like I do." Elena's heart clenched. "What if he does?" Damien leaned back, eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "If he comes here," he whispered, "he will never touch you again." Elena swallowed hard. The promise in his voice wasn't just protection. It was something deeper, like he was ready to sacrifice his life for her. Before she could respond, Tomas tugged on her sleeve. "Elena, someone's outside." Her blood froze. Damien immediately tried to stand, but Elena pushed him back. "No. You're hurt." Damien gritted his teeth, gripping the edge of the cot. "Elena, listen to me carefully. Take Tomas behind the cabinet. Stay silent." She shook her head. "I won't leave you." "Elena, please," Damien whispered, desperation flickering in his eyes. "If something happens, he'll go for you first." "Right. Now." Tears stung her eyes, but she obeyed. She pulled Tomas behind the tall wooden cabinet, holding him tightly. The cabin door creaked. Shadow moved. A step. Elena held her breath. Voice. Broken. Familiar. Elena. Elena's entire body tensed. It wasn't Howard. It was Ruth, her mother. Elena stepped out cautiously. Mother, she whispered. Ruth stood in the doorway, eyes swollen, hair tangled, her face filled with fear and remorse. Elena. I followed the men. I escaped when they weren't looking. I had to find you, she cried, trembling. Howard has lost his mind. He's gathering more men. He's coming here, Elena. He wants Damien dead. He wants to drag you back home. Damien weakly sat up on the cot, his breathing strained. When? He asked. Ruth wiped her tears. By nightfall, she whispered. They're coming before sunset. Elena felt the world collapse around her. Damien closed his eyes, exhaling a long, exhausted breath. We don't have much time. Ruth looked at him, fear and sorrow mixed in her eyes. Damien, I know what the village says about you. But you protected my daughter when no one else did. I will help you however I can. Elena grabbed her mother's hand. For the first time in her life, Ruth squeezed it back. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the promise of danger rushing toward them. The light outside dimmed faster than usual. Evening clouds crawled over the sky, turning the forest into a maze of shadows. Every tree seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Inside the cabin, tension thickened the air. Damien struggled to his feet despite his wounds. Elena rushed to steady him, but he shook his head gently. I can't sit while danger gets closer, he whispered. I won't let him take you. Ruth stood near the door, wringing her hands, her eyes red and tired. I heard them talk, she said shakily. Howard has nearly 10 men now. Alarmed. They're walking through the valley and will reach this ridge before dark. Elena's heart thudded painfully. Damien, we can't fight that many. Damien clenched his jaw. I can buy you time. No, Elena snapped, her voice breaking. I'm not losing you. Damien went still. Her words reached him deeply. Tomas moved close, clutching Elena's dress. Please don't let them take us back, he whispered. Ruth knelt beside him, stroking his hair. No one is taking you anywhere, sweetheart. She looked at Damien then, guilt and understanding in her eyes. I know I stayed silent for too long, Ruth whispered. I let Howard decide everything, even when I knew he was wrong. But I'm done being afraid. Ruth reached inside her cloak and pulled out a small hunting knife. Damien blinked. You shouldn't fight. Ruth straightened her shoulders. Maybe not. But I can slow them down. I know these woods too. I know trails Howard doesn't. Damien hesitated, then nodded slowly. Every second counts. Elena helped Damien sit before the cabin window so he could see the forest below. His arm was wrapped tightly, his breathing shallow. Even injured, he radiated a kind of strength that made Elena feel safer than any walls ever had. Elena, he said softly, there's something you must understand. She knelt in front of him. What? He didn't look at her immediately. His gaze was fixed on the fog outside. If they reach this cabin, they won't stop. Not until they take you. His voice broke. And I'm not strong enough to fight all of them like this. A tear slid down Elena's cheek. She took his hand. Don't say that. You've protected us through everything. Damien shook his head. No. You saved me too. Elena frowned. How? Damien looked at her now, really looked. When you came into my home, I was already dying, he whispered. Not from wounds. From loneliness. From the world's cruelty. I had no one left to fight for. Until you. Elena's breath hitched. He squeezed her hand, wincing from the pain. I'm afraid, he admitted quietly. Not of dying, but of failing you. Elena leaned forward, her forehead touching his. You could never fail me, she whispered. Not after everything you've done. A quiet moment passed. Soft, fragile, full of everything neither of them had said before. But the peace shattered when Ruth burst back inside the cabin. "They're close," she whispered harshly, breathless. "Very close. We have maybe 15 minutes before they're right on top of us." Damien forced himself upright. "Elena," he said, voice low, "we need to move through the back ravine. It's steep, but it leads to a hidden pass." Ruth nodded quickly. "I'll distract them." Led them down the wrong path. Tomas began to cry silently, clutching Elena. "I don't want to lose Grandma again." "You won't," Elena whispered. Ruth hugged him tightly. "I'll be right behind you," she lied softly. Damien saw it in her eyes. She wasn't planning to follow. She was planning to sacrifice herself. "Ruth," Damien said firmly, "don't do anything reckless." Her weak smile said everything. Sometimes, a mother only realizes her strength when someone threatens her child. She kissed Elena's forehead. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything I allowed to happen." Elena began to cry. "Please, Mother, don't go." Ruth brushed her cheek. "I'll find you later, my love. I promise." She stepped outside, knife in hand, cloak tied around her shoulders, and vanished into the fog. Damien pulled himself up with Elena's help. His strength was faltering, but his eyes burned with determination. "We move now," he said. They walked out the back of the cabin, Tomas held between them. Damien led them toward the narrow rocky trail behind the cliffs. Every step was heavy. Every breath felt like stolen time. Elena kept looking back toward the cabin, tears blurring her vision. "Damien," she whispered, "will she be okay?" Damien didn't answer immediately. Then softly, "She's braver than she knows. But Elena, we must trust she'll find her way back." As they reached the ravine, shouting erupted in the distance. Howard's voice thundered across the woods. "Spread out. Find them. I want Damien dead and my daughter back. Now." Elena flinched. Damien grabbed her hand. "Don't look back." She nodded, swallowing tears. Together, they stepped into the shadowed ravine, the world tightening around them as danger closed in from every direction. The ravine swallowed them in cold, damp air. Steep rock walls rose on both sides, covered in moss and dripping water. The path was narrow, just wide enough for one person at a time. Darkness pooled in every corner. Damien led the way, leaning heavily on the stone wall as he walked. Elena followed close behind, holding Tomas's hand tightly. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch, made her heart race. Far behind them, through the fog, Howard's furious voice echoed again. "Elena, you can't hide from me. I'll tear this forest apart." Tomas whimpered. Damien slowed his steps. "We don't have much time," he whispered. Elena nodded, but worry twisted inside her. "Damien, your wounds." "I'm fine," he said quickly, though his voice trembled. "I have enough strength to get you both out. That's all that matters." Elena touched his shoulder gently. "Don't carry everything alone," she whispered. His breath caught, but he didn't argue. The ravine narrowed. Rocks jutted out like sharp teeth. Damien stopped at a fallen tree blocking the path. "Help me move this," he said. Elena put Tomas behind her and pressed her hands against the heavy trunk. They pushed together. But Damien grunted in pain and staggered back, gripping his injured arm. "Damien!" Elena cried, rushing to steady him. He tried to hide the agony twisting across his face. "I'm fine. I need a moment." Tomas stepped forward and pressed his tiny hands against the trunk. "I'll help too," he whispered. Damien looked at him, surprised, faintly touched. Elena smiled tearfully. Together, Damien bracing himself, Elena pushing with all her strength, Tomas doing what he could, they finally rolled the trunk enough to squeeze through. They crawled under it and continued deeper into the ravine. Minutes turned into an hour. Every sound behind them grew louder. Branches snapped. Men shouted. Howard's voice kept echoing like a nightmare that refused to fade. Damien's steps slowed. Elena noticed him leaning more heavily, stumbling once, then again. Finally, his legs buckled. Damien! He collapsed to one knee, breathing raggedly. I just need a minute, he forced out. But Elena saw the truth. He could barely stand. She knelt beside him, her voice breaking. You need to rest. Damien shook his head stubbornly. We don't have the time. They're close. Elena grabbed his face gently, forcing him to look at her. If you collapse again, how will we reach safety? Her voice cracked. We can't lose you. Not now. Damien's eyes softened, full of pain. Not just physical. Elena, he whispered. I can't let him take you. I'd rather die than see that. Her heart ached so sharply she couldn't breathe. Damien, she whispered, tears falling. Don't you understand? Losing you would destroy me. Tomas too. Tomas hugged Damien suddenly. Please don't leave us, he cried. Damien froze. Then slowly wrapped a weak arm around the boy. A rare softness crossed his face. I'm not going anywhere, he murmured. But the truth was visible, he was fading. Suddenly, a shrill whistle cut through the woods. All three froze. Damien's eyes widened. That's them, he whispered. That's how Howard signals his men. More whistles echoed in different directions. They're surrounding the ravine, Damien said grimly. They're closing the exits. Elena's blood ran cold. What do we do? Damien struggled to stand again. There's a cave up ahead. A narrow one. We can hide there. Elena supported him, and they hurried forward. Branches cracked loudly behind them. Men entering the ravine. Howard's voice boomed. Check the caves. Don't let them escape. Elena's heart pounded. Damien pushed through the last bend and pointed. There, he whispered. A small opening in the rock, barely visible behind vines. They squeezed through just as torchlight flickered behind them. Inside, the cave was cold and dark, but deep enough to hide. Damien collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. Elena held Tomas close, listening. Men walked past outside, shouting, cursing, searching. A shadow paused right outside the cave mouth. They all held their breath. Howard's voice drifted closer. They're here, he growled. I can feel it. Elena gripped Damien's hand tightly. Tomas buried his face against her. The shadow lingered, then moved on. Footsteps faded. Damien exhaled shakily. We're safe for now. Elena rested her head on his shoulder, tears of relief slipping down her cheeks. But Damien stared at the cave entrance, jaw tight. This won't hold them forever, he whispered. When night falls, they'll search every inch. Before Elena could speak, a faint rustling came from deeper inside the cave. Tomas gasped. Elena stiffened. Damien slowly turned his head toward the darkness. Because something or someone was already inside with them.
The darkness inside the cave felt alive. Cold air curled around their ankles, and every tiny sound echoed off the stone walls. Elena tightened her grip around Tomas. Damien, despite his injuries, pushed himself upright, eyes sharp, alert. The rustling grew louder. Footsteps. Soft, uneven dragging. Damien reached for the nearby rock, ready to defend them with whatever strength he had left. Elena, he whispered, stay behind me. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Damien, what is that? He didn't answer. He didn't blink. Another step sounded. Then, a faint voice. Elena? Elena froze. That voice. Weak. Broken. Familiar. Mother, she breathed. A shadow moved closer until the dim cave light touched her face. It was Ruth, but she looked different. Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, blood streaked across her arm. She leaned against the wall, trying not to collapse. Mama, Tomas cried, running toward her. Ruth dropped to her knees as Tomas hugged her tightly. Elena rushed over, tears filling her eyes. Mother, what happened? Why are you hurt? Ruth tried to speak, but her breath came in ragged gasps. I tried to lead them away, she whispered. But Howard, he knows these woods better than I thought. He caught up to me. Elena gasped. Damien's eyes darkened. What did he do? He asked gently. Ruth swallowed. He grabbed me, shook me, screamed in my face. Said I was a traitor. I managed to shove him into the rocks and run. Her voice cracked. But he's close, Elena. Very close. Damien leaned heavily against the cave wall, his face etched with pain. How close? He asked. Ruth's eyes filled with fear. He'll reach this ravine before nightfall. Elena's breath caught. We have to move. We can't stay here. Damien shook his head weakly. No, not yet. If we run now, we'll run straight into them. They're sweeping the ravine from both ends. He pointed deeper into the cave. There's another tunnel that leads to an upper cliff. But we need to wait until the men pass this area. Elena looked past him, deeper into the cave darkness. Damien, are you sure? He nodded. It's dangerous. But it's our only chance. Minutes crawled by. Outside, men's voices echoed faintly. Check the caves. They can't be far. Howard says he saw tracks here. Ruth trembled. Tomas buried his face against her. Elena slipped her hand into Damien's. You're burning up, she whispered. Damien tried to steady his breath. I'm fine. No, you're not, she said softly. You're getting worse. Damien closed his eyes. Elena, if anything happens to me, stop. She pressed her fingers against his lips again. You don't get to say that. He looked at her, weak, wounded, but filled with something fierce and tender. You're everything I have left, he whispered. Her heart broke and healed at the same time. Suddenly, a sound cut through the cave. A stone tumbling, echoing deeper inside. Ruth gasped. Elena grabbed Tomas. Damien forced himself upright. Not from the entrance. Not from behind them. From inside the cave. Someone else was in the tunnel. Damien strained his ears. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Elena, he whispered, pulling her behind him. Stay close. Ruth held Tomas tight as they pressed against the wall. The figure came closer. A tall shape. A silhouette. Moving steadily toward them. Elena's nails dug into Damien's arm. Is it Howard? She whispered. Damien didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. His grip on the rock hardened. The shadow stepped into the faint light. Elena and Ruth gasped. Damien's eyes widened. It wasn't Howard. It wasn't one of his men. It was Jonas, Damien's brother. Pale, weak, barely standing, clothes torn, face bruised, breathing harshly, but alive. Damien, Jonas whispered before collapsing onto the stone floor. Elena covered her mouth in shock. Damien limped forward, falling to his knees beside him. Jonas, how? Damien whispered, voice breaking for the first time. Jonas coughed weakly, eyes fluttering open. I followed them, he rasped. Heard Howard's plans. I knew you'd run to the ravine. He clenched Damien's arm weakly. I came to warn you. Elena knelt beside Damien, helping support Jonas's head. What is it? She whispered softly. Jonas swallowed hard. Howard does not just want Elena back. He coughed violently, blood on his lips. He wants to burn the forest, flush you out. Elena froze. Ruth covered her mouth. Damien's breathing stopped for a moment. He's going to set the woods on fire, he whispered. Jonas nodded painfully. He has torches, oil, men spread across 3 ridges. They'll start before sunset. Elena's eyes filled with terror. Damien, what do we do? Damien looked at them all, Elena trembling, Tomas clinging to Ruth, Jonas dying in his arms. And with broken determination, he whispered, we don't hide anymore. He stood, bracing himself against the wall. We fight back. Jonas lay weakly on the cave floor, breath shallow and uneven. The dim light flickered across his blood-streaked face. Elena pressed cloth against his wound. Stay with us. Please, just stay awake, she whispered. Jonas opened his eyes slightly, giving her a faint smile. Told you, he rasped. Damien always finds trouble. Damien knelt beside him, voice rough with emotion. You should have never come after us. Not like this. Jonas coughed softly. I couldn't let you face him alone, not again. Elena watched the two brothers, one broken in body, the other broken in heart, and something inside her shifted painfully. Damien had lost everything once. She wouldn't let it happen again. Outside, the forest wind howled louder. Smoke drifted faintly through the cave entrance. Ruth stiffened. Elena, do you smell that? Elena inhaled. Her stomach dropped. Smoke, she whispered. Damien's eyes sharpened instantly. He's starting the fires. Jonas nodded weakly. They're lighting torches, spreading oil across the underbrush. Once it catches, this whole ravine will turn into a trap. Elena trembled. Damien, we're stuck here. How do we escape a fire? Damien forced himself to stand, leaning heavily on the wall. We don't escape it. His jaw tightened. We stop it. Ruth stepped forward. Damien, how? They have 10 men. And you're injured. Damien's eyes hardened, not with fear, but with resolve. We have 2 advantages, he said quietly. They think we're weak, and they don't know these tunnels like I do. Elena frowned. Tunnels? Damien nodded. This cave connects to an old mining shaft on the east side. It leads above the main ridge, directly behind Howard's men. Ruth gasped softly. You mean we come out behind them? Damien nodded again. And we end this before the fire spreads. Elena hesitated. Damien, are you sure you can fight? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped close to her. So close she could feel the warmth of his breath despite the cold cave air. Elena, he whispered, voice raw. I don't care what happens to me, but I won't let him hurt you again. Not ever. Her heart squeezed painfully. Damien, I don't want you to die for me, she whispered back. He shook his head softly. I'm not planning on dying, he murmured. I'm planning on protecting the only people I have left. Elena blinked away tears. Then Jonas coughed again, harder. Damien rushed back to him. Jonas, stay awake, Elena pleaded. Jonas's voice wavered. Damien, listen. Howard is unhinged. He's not just trying to bring Elena home. He wants revenge. He wants to destroy everything connected to you. He wants this forest to become your grave. Damien's jaw clenched. Then we end it tonight. Jonas weakly grabbed Damien's wrist. Be careful, he has a rifle now. Elena gasped. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. Damien closed his eyes briefly, but when he opened them, determination burned stronger than ever. Then we move before he's ready. Tomas tugged Elena's dress. Elena, I'm scared. Elena knelt and cupped his cheek. I know, but we're together. And Damien will protect us, she whispered, kissing his forehead. Damien approached and placed his large, rough hand gently on Tomas's hair. I swear to you, he said softly, no one will touch your family again. Elena's breath hitched at the word family. Damien looked at all of them. Elena, Tomas, Ruth. His voice grew firmer. Follow me through the tunnel. Stay behind me no matter what happens. Then he looked down at Jonas. You can't walk, Damien whispered, guilt stabbing through his voice. Jonas smiled faintly. Leave me block the entrance. I'll be fine. Damien shook his head fiercely. I'm not leaving you. Jonas exhaled painfully. You don't have a choice, brother. Elena placed a gentle hand on Damien's arm. He saved us by warning us, she whispered. He would want you to protect the living now. Damien trembled, torn between love and duty. Finally, Jonas whispered. Go, end this. I'll slow them down if they come through. Damien leaned forward, resting his forehead briefly against Jonas's. I will come back for you, he whispered. Jonas nodded weakly. I know. Damien slowly rose and turned to the others. Stay close. We move now. He lit a small lantern and stepped into the deeper darkness of the cave tunnel. Elena wrapped Tomas in her arms, Ruth following from behind. As they left, Jonas looked after them, a sad smile on his lips, before the shadows swallowed him. And, behind them, smoke thickened. Voices grew louder. Fire crackled through the woods. The final confrontation was coming.
The tunnel was colder than the outer cave, the air thin and stale. Their footsteps echoed softly against the stone walls. Damien walked ahead, lantern in hand, his silhouette trembling ever so slightly from the pain he tried so desperately to hide. Elena followed closely, her hand gently pressed against his back whenever he stumbled. Ruth walked behind them, holding Tomas, who clung to her neck silently. The tunnel narrowed until only one person could pass at a time. "Elena," Damien murmured, "stay close. Don't lose sight of the light." "I won't," she whispered. She couldn't. Not when he was the only thing anchoring her in this nightmare. Minutes passed. The deeper they went, the more the tunnel slanted upward, steep and jagged. Damien's breathing grew heavier, more strained. Elena reached for his arm. "You need to stop." "No," his voice was sharp but weak. "If we don't reach the ridge before they light the lower woods, the smoke will fill this tunnel." Ruth gasped softly. "So if we're late, we suffocate." Damien nodded once. Elena swallowed her fear and grabbed Damien's hand. "Then we keep moving." A faint smile touched his lips. Even through pain, her bravery steadied him. Far behind them, faint echoes traveled down the cave. Step, voices. Men were entering the cave. Elena's heart lurched. "They found Jonas," she whispered. Damien's jaw tightened, pain flickering in his eyes. He whispered more to himself than anyone. "Jonas, hold them off." The tunnel ended abruptly in a small stone chamber. Damien raised the lantern. Hidden behind thick roots was a narrow vertical shaft leading upward. "This is it," Damien said. Ruth frowned. "How do we climb with Tomas?" Damien didn't hesitate. "I'll carry him." Elena shook her head fiercely. "No, you're hurt. I'll go first with Tomas. You come after me." Damien wanted to argue, but her voice was steady and determined. He finally nodded. Elena tied Tomas to her back with her shawl, knotting it tight. "Tomas, hold on to me," she whispered. "I'm scared," he whimpered. "I know. But I won't let go." Damien tested the shaft walls. "Solid enough." "I'll give you a boost," he said, lowering himself for her to step on his hands. She climbed, fingers clutching the rough stone, heart hammering. Ruth followed next. Damien waited until both were halfway up before he began to climb. His injured arm shook violently. His breath was ragged. Halfway up, a shout echoed beneath them. A torchlight flared at the bottom of the tunnel. Men entered the chamber. Howard's men. Elena gasped. "Damien, faster." Damien gritted his teeth and pulled himself upward, dizziness washing over him. A man below shouted, "There! There in the shaft!" Torches slammed against the stone. Fire sparked. Elena's grip tightened. "Hurry! Elena, move!" Damien shouted back, voice breaking. She climbed faster, Tomas crying softly against her back. A man below reached the bottom of the shaft, looking up. "I see them." Damien kicked a loose stone, sending it crashing down onto the man's face. The man screamed, but others were already arriving. "Get up there. Don't let them escape. Howard wants the girl." Elena felt her legs tremble. "We're so close," she whispered. Damien's strength faltered. His injured arm buckled. His grip slipped. "No, no," Elena cried. Damien dangled for a moment, pain tearing through him. "Elena," he whispered, voice cracking. "Don't look back. Keep climbing." She looked down anyway. He was sliding. "Damien!" He forced his good arm to grip a stone, pulling himself up with a guttural cry of pain. Ruth reached the top edge and pulled Tomas to safety. "Elena, hurry." Finally, Elena reached the top ridge. She turned, gasping, reaching her hand down. "Damien, take my hand." He looked up, eyes full of pain, fear, and something deeper. He reached. Their fingers touched. And then a man grabbed Damien's boot from below. Damien snarled, kicking hard, but he was losing strength. "Let go of him," Elena screamed. The man laughed cruelly. You're coming with us, monster. Elena grabbed a sharp rock from the cliff edge and hurled it down. It struck the man's face hard. He fell back, cursing, blood spraying. Damien seized the moment, pulling himself upward. Elena leaned dangerously close, extending both hands. Damien, please. With his last burst of strength, he grabbed her wrists. She pulled. Ruth grabbed Elena's waist. Elena pulled harder, and together, they dragged Damien free of the shaft. He collapsed beside her, shaking violently, breath broken. Elena fell against him, sobbing. You're safe, she whispered over and over. But below them, Howard's furious roar echoed up the shaft. Damien! Elena! You can't run any longer. Damien's eyes darkened. He's close, he whispered. Elena swallowed hard. What do we do now? Damien lifted his gaze toward the burning glow rising through the treetops. We finish this. The ridge air was sharp and freezing. Wind lashed against their faces as Damien, Elena, Ruth, and Tomas emerged from the shaft onto the high cliff path. Below them, the forest glowed orange. Howard's men had started the fires. Flames crackled through dry brush. Smoke climbed toward the sky like black claws. Elena hugged Tomas closer, shielding his face. Damien, she whispered, trembling. If the fire climbs up here. It won't, he said firmly. We're above the valley. They're trying to flush us down. But we're already on the higher ground. Ruth wiped soot from her cheek. So what now? Damien pointed across the ridge. To a higher cliff overlooking the burning forest. If we reach that outcrop, we'll see everything. Howard won't be able to ambush us. He'll have to come straight. Elena nodded, but her voice shook. And then? Damien swallowed hard. Then it ends. Tonight. The ridge path was narrow. One wrong step and they would fall hundreds of feet into burning trees. Damien walked ahead, gripping the rocky wall for support, trying to hide how weak he'd become. Elena, he said quietly without turning. If anything happens, take Tomas and run east. The river splits the fire line. No, she snapped instantly. I'm not going anywhere without you. He stopped, turned, looked at her. Bruised, exhausted, terrified, and still unshakably brave. Elena, his voice softened. You deserve a life without fear. She stepped closer. I want a life with you, she whispered. Fear or no fear. Damien closed his eyes for a moment, because those words hurt and healed him all at once. Ruth watched them, tears in her eyes. Even she could see the truth now. They weren't running together by accident. They were bound by something deeper. They reached the top of the cliff. A wide plateau opened before them. Quiet, eerie, lit only by the glow of fire below. Damien stood at the edge, breathing heavily. He'll come here, Damien said. This is where the ridge narrows. He likes to corner his prey. Elena looked around nervously. It's too open. Too exposed. That's why he'll choose it, Damien murmured. Ruth held Tomas, rocking him gently as he trembled. Elena, are we safe here? Tomas whispered. Elena knelt, brushing his hair. As long as Damien is here, yes. Tomas nodded into her shoulder. Damien overheard. He turned slightly, and despite the pain, a small, broken smile touched his lips. Elena had no idea how much those words meant to him. Minutes passed. Wind roared. Smoke thickened. The firestorm below grew louder. The step. Low. Heavy. Purposeful. Damien tensed, turning toward the narrow entrance of the cliff. Elena's breath hitched. A shadow emerged through the smoke. Then another. Then another. Howard. And 3 of his remaining men. Howard's boots crunched on gravel as he stepped into view, rifle slung casually over his shoulder. He smiled. Cold, poisonous smile. Well, well, he drawled. Look at my darling daughter. Running around with that monster again. Elena moved in front of Tomas instinctively. I'm not your possession, she shouted, voice fierce despite her shaking. "I'm not going back with you." Howard's smile tightened. "You were born to obey me." Damien stepped between them, weak, bruised, barely standing, but unyielding. "She belongs to no one," he said quietly. "Especially not you." Howard's eyes narrowed. "Oh, Damien." Still pretending to be a hero. He laughed mockingly. "You can barely stand. Do you really think you can protect her?" Damien didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just squared his shoulders, breathing hard. Howard stepped closer, expression shifting from amusement to rage. "You stole my daughter. You stole my control. Now I'll take everything from you." Elena shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "You ruined everything yourself. All I ever wanted was a life. And you sold me." Howard snapped. "I gave you a life. You were nothing without me." Damien clenched his fists. "That's where you're wrong," he said. "She's everything because she escaped you." Howard's face twisted in fury. He raised the rifle. Elena screamed. "No." Damien lunged. Not backward, not away, but forward, placing himself between the gun and Elena. Howard's finger tightened on the trigger. But suddenly, a voice rang out from behind. "Drop the gun, you coward." Everyone turned. Another figure limped into view. Jonas, alive, bleeding, barely standing, but alive. Howard snarled. "You again." Jonas raised a shaking arm, aiming a small stolen blade. "Hurt my brother, and I'll make sure you never walk out of these woods." Damien's eyes widened with emotion. "Jonas, you should have stayed." Jonas cut him off with a weak smirk. "You always said, we protect each other. Remember?" For a moment, the world froze. Howard growled. "Fine. I'll kill both of you." He cocked the rifle. Damien stepped forward, weaponless, exhausted. Elena grabbed his arm. "Damien, please. Don't." He looked at her. With a mixture of love, pain, and final resolve. "I'm not letting him take you again." Howard's rifle aligned. Jonas braced himself. Damien stepped toward him. And the final confrontation began. The wind howled across the cliff. Sparks from the burning forest below drifted upward like deadly fireflies. Howard's finger tightened on the rifle trigger. Aim locked on Damien's chest. Elena's scream tore through the smoke. "No!" Damien stepped in front of her, arms spread, ready to take the bullet if he had to. Howard smirked darkly. "You always were a fool, Damien." Jonas staggered forward, clutching his bleeding side. "Howard, stop." Howard turned slightly. Fatal mistake. Damien moved. Not with strength, but with pure instinct, pure desperation, pure love. He grabbed the end of the rifle and shoved it upward just as Howard fired. Bang! The bullet shot into the sky, echoing across the ridge. Howard cursed. Damien groaned, the recoil slamming into his injured arm. The two men struggled, the rifle twisting between them. Howard snarled in Damien's face. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you like the animal you are." Damien pushed harder, jaw clenched, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. "I won't let you touch her," he growled. "Not ever again." Howard slammed the rifle against Damien's shoulder. Damien dropped to one knee, gasping from the pain. Elena cried out, "Damien, get up, please." Howard lifted the rifle stock, aiming to smash it into Damien's skull. Jonas threw himself forward. "Damien!" He tackled Howard from the side, knocking him several steps back. Howard hit the ground hard, the rifle sliding across the gravel. Damien crawled toward Elena as she rushed to him. "I'm okay. I'm okay," he whispered, though his voice was cracking. Jonas tried to hold Howard down, but Howard, fueled by rage, overpowered his weakened body. He slammed Jonah's head against the rocks. "You pathetic rat!" Howard shouted. "You should have stayed dead." Elena screamed. "Jonas!" Damien tried to push himself up. But he fell, grabbing his ribs in agony. "Damien, don't move," Elena begged. "I have to," he choked out. "I have to protect you." Howard grabbed a jagged stone, raising it above Jonas's head. "End of the line, boy." Elena covered her mouth, sobbing. Damien released a breath that sounded like a prayer. Tomas stepped forward. "Stop." His tiny voice cracked, trembling but fierce. Howard froze, more shocked than threatened. "You hurt my mom. You hurt my grandma. You hurt everyone," Tomas cried. "Leave us alone." Howard sneered. "You, child. You think you can stop me?" Tomas shook but didn't step back. Damien's voice broke. "Tomas, go back. Please." But Tomas didn't move. His courage, his pure, innocent courage, hit Howard harder than any punch. He stepped back, thrown off for just a second. Just 1 second. But that's all Damien needed. With a roar that ripped from deep inside him, Damien lunged forward and rammed into Howard's back. Howard toppled forward, the stone skidding from his hand. Damien collapsed over him, weakness threatening to consume him, but he held on with shaking arms. Howard growled, twisting violently. His elbow slammed into Damien's side. Damien gasped, blood soaking through his shirt. Elena cried out, "Damien!" He tightened his grip around Howard's neck, voice trembling. "Let her go," Howard thrashed, grabbing Damien's throat. The two men wrestled dangerously close to the cliff edge. Elena ran toward them, terrified. "Stop, both of you." But they didn't stop. They couldn't. Years of pain, years of abuse, years of fear, all collided in that final struggle. Howard slammed Damien against a rock. Damien struck Howard's jaw with his fist. Howard head-butted him. Damien grabbed his collar and dragged him down again. Both bleeding, both shaking, both fighting for their lives. Howard shoved Damien with all his strength. Damien stumbled toward the cliff edge. Elena screamed, "No, Damien!" Howard charged, ready to knock Damien off the cliff. Damien braced himself. Jonas, barely conscious, threw himself between them. Howard hit Jonas instead, the two tumbling dangerously close to the edge. "No!" Elena cried, running toward them. Damien forced himself up, each breath a flame of agony. He reached out. Jonas slid. Howard grabbed the cliff edge. Jonas dangled below him. "Damien!" Jonas gasped. "Don't risk your life for." Damien ignored him. He crawled, bleeding, shaking, and grabbed Jonas's wrist. "I told you." Damien grunted, voice breaking. "I'd come back for you." Jonas sobbed weakly. Howard snarled, climbing back up. "You're all going to die." Elena grabbed a thick fallen branch and swung. It crashed against Howard's forearm. Howard screamed, losing grip for a moment. Damien, with one arm holding Jonas, reached out with the other and shoved Howard's hand off the rock. Howard dangled for a split second. And in that moment, Damien looked him dead in the eyes. "This ends with you." Howard's eyes widened. "No, no, Damien." His grip slipped, and Howard fell. His scream echoed through the burning forest, until it vanished into silence. Elena collapsed to her knees, covering her mouth. Ruth wept softly. Tomas clung to Elena. Damien used the last of his strength to pull Jonas back onto safe ground. When Jonas lay beside him, breathing shallow but alive, Damien finally let himself fall back against the stones. Elena rushed to him, cradling his face. "Damien, Damien, look at me, are you okay? Please, say something." Damien opened his eyes, exhausted but smiling weakly. "It's over," he whispered. "You're safe." And for the first time since the nightmare began, Elena believed him. The world felt strangely quiet after Howard's scream faded into the burning valley below. No footsteps, no shouts, only the crackling of distant fire, and the soft sobs of a family that had nearly been destroyed. Elena held Damien's face in her trembling hands. Damien, stay with me. Please. He blinked slowly. Eyes heavy, body exhausted, breath uneven. I'm here, he whispered. I'm not leaving. Elena broke down, forehead pressed against his. You saved us again. Damien gave a small, tired smile. You saved me too. Jonas lay nearby, pale but breathing. Ruth tore a strip from her own dress and pressed it against his wound. You'll be all right, she whispered, voice thick with guilt and relief. I won't let anything happen to you, not anymore. Jonas nodded weakly. Where is he? Jonas asked. Ruth looked toward the cliff edge. Gone, she said quietly. It's finished. Jonas closed his eyes, letting out a shaky breath. Not from joy but from years of terror finally ending. Tomas crawled toward Damien and Elena, wiping his tears. Damien, are you hurt? He asked between small sobs. Damien lifted his hand, placing it gently on the boy's head. I've had worse, he whispered with a faint chuckle that turned into a cough. Elena panicked, wiping blood from his mouth. No, don't talk like that. You need help. Damien's fingers brushed her cheek. You're safe now. That's all that matters. Her heart shattered and healed all at once. The sky began to lighten as the fire below died down. Smoke drifted into the air in silver plumes. They needed shelter. They needed warmth. They needed to survive the night. Elena looked toward the eastern ridge. There's a hunting shelter near the river, she whispered. I went there once when I was little. It isn't far. Damien tried to sit up, but pain seized his ribs. He groaned, collapsing back. Elena held him tightly. No, don't move. Jonas too. You're both hurt. Damien looked up at her with quiet vulnerability. Elena, I'm supposed to protect you. You did, she whispered fiercely. And now it's my turn. Damien's eyes softened. Something warm and unspoken passing between them. Ruth stood slowly, wiping soot from her face. We can carry Jonas together, she said. But Damien. Elena can't lift him alone. Elena held his hand. I'll manage. Even if it takes all night. Damien shook his head faintly. Elena. I don't want to be a burden. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look into her eyes. You're not a burden, she whispered. You're the reason we're still alive. Damien's breath trembled. For the first time, he let her see the fear he'd hidden for so long. Elena. I thought I lost you. She pulled him into her arms. I'm right here. And I'm not going anywhere. Ruth wrapped Jonas's injured side. Tomas helped by bringing small stones and sticks for makeshift splints. Despite everything, there was a strange, warm unity among them, a broken family slowly stitching itself back together. For the first time, Ruth looked at Damien with gratitude, not suspicion. You saved my daughter, she whispered. And my grandson. Damien shook his head. They saved me. Ruth's eyes glistened. I was blind for so long. I'm sorry for everything. But I see clearly now. Elena squeezed her mother's hand. We'll fix things. Together. The fire's glow dimmed behind the mountains as the survivors stood quietly on the ridge. Battered, bruised, but alive. Jonas whispered. So. We go to the river shelter. Damien nodded weakly. Yes. Then we figure out what comes next. Elena kissed his forehead. What comes next is life, she whispered. A real life. Free from him. Damien caught her hand and squeezed it gently. Then let's live. He tried to stand. Elena supporting him from one side, Ruth from the other. Tomas held his hand firmly. They walked away from the cliff. From the nightmare. Toward the first dawn of their freedom. And for the first time in years, Damien didn't feel alone. The morning sun rose slowly over the valley, casting soft golden light across the charred treetops. Smoke drifted lazily into the sky, like the forest was finally exhaling after years of holding its breath. Elena, Damien, Jonas, Ruth, and little Tomas moved quietly toward the river shelter. Their steps were slow, heavy, but filled with something none of them had felt in a long time: freedom. The small wooden shelter came into view, half broken, forgotten by the world, but standing, just like them. Ruth spread blankets along the floor. Jonas sank down with a groan, clutching his bandaged side. Tomas crawled into Elena's lap, exhausted. She stroked his hair gently, humming something she remembered from childhood. Damien remained standing near the doorway, staring out at the river. Elena rose and walked to him. "You should rest," she whispered. "You're hurt." Damien didn't turn, but his voice softened. "I couldn't sleep even if I tried. My brother, your mother, you, all nearly died because of me." Elena stepped closer, placing her hand over his. "Because of you we survived," she said softly. "How many times must I tell you that?" His chest rose slowly. "I don't know how to be anything other than someone who protects," he admitted quietly. "It's all I've ever been." She leaned her head against his arm. "Then protect us," she whispered. "Not from danger, but by staying alive. By staying with us." Damien finally looked down at her. His eyes, tired, bruised but warm, held emotions he'd buried for years. "Elena," he whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know if I deserve a family." She reached up and touched his face gently. "Deserve?" Her voice broke. "You earned it. You fought for it. You bled for it." He swallowed hard. "And you," he murmured. "You changed everything." Elena smiled through tears. "As long as you're with us, we'll be all right." Damien hesitated, then slowly placed his forehead against hers. Their breaths mingled, their hands intertwined. The world, despite the soot and scars, felt warm again. For the first time, Damien allowed himself to feel safe. Later, after Jonas and Tomas were asleep, Ruth sat beside Damien. "You know," she whispered, "I used to believe every lie Howard told me." Damien remained quiet, eyes fixed on the river. Ruth continued, guilt thick in her voice. "I watched him break Elena's spirit. I watched him push her to fear. And I did nothing." Damien finally spoke. "You were afraid, just like she was." Ruth shook her head. "That doesn't excuse me. But I want to do better now. For her. For Tomas." Damien nodded gently. "You already have." Ruth smiled weakly. "And you? I misjudged you. I listened to the town's whispers. I believed you were dangerous." Damien's voice dropped. "Maybe I was." Ruth touched his arm. "No. A dangerous man wouldn't have risked his life over and over for strangers. A dangerous man wouldn't have saved my daughter." Damien stared at the water, eyes clouding with emotion. Then Ruth said the words he didn't expect. "Welcome to the family, Damien." He swallowed hard, and a tear slipped down his cheek before he could hide it. Ruth pretended not to notice. That night, Elena sat beside Damien as he leaned back against the shelter wall. The moonlight bathed them in silver. "Do you think we can stay here for a while?" she asked softly. Damien nodded. "The world out there is dangerous. But here we can breathe." Elena took his hand. "And after?" Damien looked at her, really looked. "We rebuild," he whispered. "Somewhere safe, somewhere far, somewhere new." Elena's voice softened. "With you." He nodded, eyes gentle. "With all of us," he said. Tomas stirred in his sleep and murmured Damien's name. Damien smiled, a rare, genuine, soft smile. Elena rested her head on his shoulder. The river flowed quietly. The forest crackled in the distance. The moon painted everything with hope. For the first time in years, they had a future. Damien kissed Elena's forehead, whispering, "It's over now." Elena whispered back, "No, Damien. It's just beginning." The camera of life pulled back, showing a broken family, stitched together by love, courage and pain, sitting in a small river shelter, breathing, healing, alive.